2024 looks to be one of Bitcoin's most eventful years ever, with the potential ETF approval, a halving event, but still the looming murmurs of an upcoming global recession. So let's look to see what's most likely for Bitcoin in the coming year. Today we're going to be doing a 2024 outlook for Bitcoin, and where better to start than the stock to flow model chart we have here, due to, of course, the 2024 halving. That's due for around April time, which will see the block reward for BTC, the new BTC inflation rate coming into the space, dropping from 6.25 BTC about every 10 minutes to 3.125. Historically, the halving event has been one of the most bullish catalysts for Bitcoin's price action. And what we can see from the stock to flow model chart here is at these vertical dotted lines here, every time one of these halving event occurs, it is pretty much immediately followed by an exponentially bullish run for Bitcoin's price action. We can see in every single instance, Bitcoin has had a very positive reaction in price. And as I film this now at the very tail end of 2023, we can see that we are only a few months away from hopefully seeing Bitcoin follow this line, maybe not exactly, potentially to a price of around $440,000. Whether you're a believer in the stock to flow chart or not, ultimately the halving event does have a massive impact on the Bitcoin price action. Even if it's just due to the miner revenue being cut in half, we're going to see a lot of volatility in the coming months as miners try to front run the halving event to lock in the bigger block rewards. Maybe we see a hash rate decrease following the event as the cost to actually run a Bitcoin mining operation begin to increase. Well, they'll practically double if Bitcoin's price doesn't increase rapidly following. So like we said, we can't instantly expect Bitcoin to increase 50 or 100% in price. But ultimately, we do need to acknowledge that it is probably going to bring a very volatile and speculative time of price action for Bitcoin, especially alongside a potential Bitcoin ETF approval, which is what many traders and investors are looking towards as a potential huge influx of institutional capital inflows into the markets, potentially come flooding in due to mainly the BlackRock ETF is what we're seeing the most news and headlines about. But ultimately, there's likely going to be lots and lots of these spot Bitcoin ETFs coming through, which are hopefully going to bring, like we said, huge capital inflows into the Bitcoin space, which of course should also result in a bit of positive Bitcoin price action, especially as well if we look at the current risk appetite amongst traditional markets. If we just look at the treasury yields here for BTC, we can see, especially if we just focus on the shorter term yields, these are beginning to see a turning point as well, beginning to decrease. And we can see historically, once we see treasury yields decreasing, this indicates that the amount of capital flowing into more safe haven assets, being government bonds, is decreasing. So potentially there's a sentiment shift in traditional markets, which we can also see by the high yield credit cycles, which recently has seen this exponential increase of the lows we've seen in this cycle, which, to be honest, looks pretty similar to what we've seen in previous cycles too. Again, preceding the latter stages of the exponential bull cycle price action we see pretty much bang on the halving events. It's very interesting to see the patterns emerge where even though Bitcoin is an independent asset that isn't necessarily tied in its halving cycle to traditional business or liquidity cycles, that we do see such parallel price action and fundamental events pretty much occurring cycle after cycle. If we look at something like the global M2 money supply versus Bitcoin year on year, we can see a very similar story where in 2023 and late 2022, we saw this bottom out and begin to increase pretty much exactly as Bitcoin found its price action bottom and has had a very positive 2023. And again, it looks very similar to price action we've seen in the past, such as in the 2019 into 2020 cycle after we'd bottomed in price action here. Took a few months after this M2 money supply had bottomed out for Bitcoin to really see large exponential gains to the upside. And it looks like, again, we're in kind of this middling region just before the halving event where we're hopefully going to see a very positive reaction in price action. And we also need to take into account that all of this is happening alongside Bitcoin being the least liquid it's ever been. Historically, we've seen Bitcoin in the early stages of the transitionary period from bear cycle into bull cycle, the early stages of a bull cycle. We see the more long-term investors begin to start taking some profit on their positions, new investors coming into the space. Here we're just looking at the wallets that are holding Bitcoin for at least a 1 year period. But we can see this hasn't begun to turn over and start decreasing yet, which we usually see at pretty early stages in a bull cycle. If we just look at the previous 2 cycles, we can see after Bitcoin's price action had bottomed, it only took a few months for this to really start decreasing. I know in 2019, 2020, it was almost a double bull run start because of the COVID 2020 and the plus token Ponzi scheme. But we could see once they started decreasing very early on after Bitcoin had bottomed and we started to see some positive price action, it indicated much higher prices were upcoming for Bitcoin. But then again, after the 2020 dip, we did have this once again turnover as Bitcoin's price action was pretty boring, pretty stagnant before that exponential price increase to the all-time high. But now Bitcoin still is seeing no selling. No one is taking profit on their positions. Everyone is anticipating considerably higher prices. Why wouldn't they? With a halving event that historically has been one of Bitcoin's major bullish catalysts, with the liquidity cycle beginning to turn into more bullish, more greedy sentiment in traditional markets. And looking at something like the global liquidity chart, we're seeing the supply of fiat money begin to start increasing. So obviously people are going to look to assets to try and maximize their returns, and where better to do so than Bitcoin. And alongside that, an ETF approval, which could potentially see huge institutional inflows into the cryptocurrency markets, which is obviously going to be a huge bullish catalyst for massive price increases. But we do have to take into account something like the yield curve inversion, which is signified by the 2-year yield being higher than the 10-year yield, which maybe indicates less confidence in the long term of traditional market economies. And what we covered recently in a video is this inversion isn't necessarily the bearish thing that maybe many investors look towards to maybe see recessions or big traditional market crashes. Really, it's the reversion, which historically has been a bit of a bearish signal in markets. So it'll be interesting to see if this, again, does have a negative impact on Bitcoin's price action. It's something we've never seen in Bitcoin before. Maybe it's the thing that spurs on a decoupling from Bitcoin and traditional markets, and we see this uncorrelated price action as Bitcoin rallies to the upside as traditional markets see a decrease. But one thing we need to look to as well is just Bitcoin, since the cycle lows, has increased very rapidly, and potentially too rapidly, dare I say. As we've seen diminishing returns in every single cycle so far, Bitcoin is actually currently outperforming the previous 2 cycles, which at this point is something we haven't really seen before. So maybe we are due for a little bit of a pullback. If not, then maybe just some more volatile price action to the upside and the downside. Like we said, with the halving event, there's definitely going to be some more volatility coming in. With an ETF approval, all of this could be wrong, and we could see Bitcoin increase another 50 or 100% in absolutely no time. But really, keeping more of a level-headed approach to this, we need to be open to every single possibility and outcome. So really, if a Bitcoin pullback were to occur, really we just need to see that as a golden opportunity to accumulate even more at discounted prices before the seeming inevitability of a great Bitcoin bull run spurred on by all the catalysts we've discussed today. Also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. And make sure to check out all the resources we've discussed today, as well as the many more that are all available on lookintobitcoin.com, your #1 source for Bitcoin information. So just to summarize, Bitcoin is entering 2024 with a halving event scheduled for only a few months away, along with a potential ETF approval that will likely bring large institutional interest and capital inflows for Bitcoin. And global liquidity continues to increase while the liquid supply of Bitcoin continues to decrease. It's simple supply and demand economics. If the supply of fiat money is increasing while the demand of that is decreasing, investors are going to look for somewhere else to park their capital. And we're also seeing the supply of Bitcoin decrease while that demand is subsequently increasing. It's simple maths, really. We're likely to see some big price increases for Bitcoin, unless, of course, we do see something like a global recession. Like we said, Bitcoin does look a bit temporarily overbought, so that is just something to keep in mind, that we may see a little bit of drawdown. Really, in every Bitcoin cycle, we do see double-digit drawdowns, but as discussed, these should be seen as golden opportunities to accumulate BTC at a discount, because ultimately Bitcoin on a macro and on-chain basis looks in a very healthy position and is pretty similarly positioned to previous cycles, which, if those are anything to go by, like we said, we're going to see some great Bitcoin price action throughout the year of 2024. If you liked this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to professional resolution charts, advanced macro and portfolio data tools, in-depth crypto industry reports, live and personalized indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and much, much more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know what your thoughts are on the upcoming year of 2024 for Bitcoin. Do you think it is going to be a bullish year? Do you think maybe the bearish fundamental catalysts that we could be starting to see are going to weigh Bitcoin down, and we're not going to see a year quite as bullish as 2023. As I said, let me know down below in the comment section or on social media. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you have a great 2024, and I'll see you in the next one.